Welcome to Champion Stories. If this is your first time here, subscribe now and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. And now, on to today's story. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of Manny Pacquiao's home in General Santos City, casting gentle rays across the breakfast table where he sat with his wife Jinky. Steam rose from his cup of coffee as he scrolled through his phone, a routine that had become second nature after years of staying connected with his fans and the world around him. What started as a typical Saturday morning was about to transform into something that would touch millions of hearts across the globe. Jinky noticed the sudden change in her husband's expression as his fingers stopped moving across the screen. His brow furrowed slightly, and that familiar look of deep concentration settled across his features, the same expression she had seen countless times when he was preparing for the biggest fights of his career. But this wasn't about boxing. This was about something far more profound. The story that captured Manny's attention featured two 7-year-old twin girls named Ligaya and Mayumi Santos, living in a small barangay in Mindanao. Born with an extremely rare genetic condition called craniopagus twins, they were conjoined at the head, sharing critical blood vessels and brain tissue. The medical complexity of their condition meant that separation surgery would require a team of the world's most skilled neurosurgeons, advanced medical technology, and a financial investment that seemed impossible for their family. Their father, Angelo Santos, worked as a tricycle driver, earning barely enough to feed his family of 6. Their mother, Clarita, spent her days caring for the twins and their 2 other children, stretching every peso to make ends meet. The family lived in a modest nipa hut with corrugated metal roofing, where the twins shared a specially constructed bed that accommodated their unique situation. Despite their physical challenges, the girls radiated joy and innocence that touched everyone who met them. The article detailed how local doctors had done everything possible within their limited resources, but the twins needed specialized care that was only available in a handful of medical centers worldwide. The estimated cost for the separation surgery, including pre-operative planning, the actual procedure, and extensive post-operative care, reached well over $1 million, an astronomical amount that seemed as distant as the stars for the Santos family. Manny's phone buzzed with notifications as the story began circulating on social media. Comments poured in from around the Philippines and beyond, with people expressing their heartbreak over the family's situation and their frustration at feeling powerless to help. Some had started small fundraising efforts in their communities, collecting whatever spare change they could find, but the gap between their generous efforts and the actual need remained overwhelming. As Manny continued reading, he learned about the twins' personalities despite their extraordinary circumstances. Ligaya, whose name meant happiness, was described as the more outgoing of the two, always trying to make others laugh with her silly faces and jokes. Mayumi, meaning tender, was the thoughtful one, often humming softly to comfort her sister during difficult moments. Their bond transcended their physical connection. They seemed to understand each other's thoughts and feelings in ways that amazed even their parents. The medical team in Manila had already conducted preliminary assessments, determining that separation was technically possible but would require immediate action. Time was becoming a critical factor, as the girls' shared blood vessels were creating increasing pressure that could lead to serious complications if left untreated much longer. Manny set his phone down and looked across the table at Jinky, who had been watching him with growing concern. In that moment, something shifted within him, a familiar feeling he had experienced before major decisions that would define not just his career, but his legacy as a human being. The silence in the room stretched between Manny and Jinky as memories from his own childhood began flooding back with startling clarity. He closed his eyes and could almost feel the rough wooden floor of their old house in Kibawe, Bukidnon, where he had spent his earliest years sleeping alongside his siblings, sometimes going to bed with empty stomachs, while his mother Dionysia tried to hide her own tears of frustration and helplessness. Those were the days when a single peso felt like a fortune, when his father Rosalio would disappear for days, looking for work that might bring home enough money for rice and dried fish. Manny remembered the weight of responsibility that had settled on his young shoulders, even as a child, watching his mother's face grow thinner as she gave her portions to her children, pretending she wasn't hungry. The parallel between his own family's struggles and what the Santos family was experiencing now struck him with overwhelming force. But there was one crucial difference. He now had the power to change their story, to rewrite an ending that seemed predetermined by poverty and circumstance. The thought both humbled and energized him in ways that even his greatest boxing victories never had. Jinky watched as her husband's expression shifted from contemplation to something more resolute. She had seen this transformation before, during those quiet moments when Manny would make decisions that went far beyond their family, touching the lives of complete strangers who needed hope more than they needed anything else in the world. Manny's mind wandered to the countless families he had encountered throughout his career, people who had approached him at events, in airports, on the streets, sharing their stories of hardship and struggle. Each story had left an invisible mark on his heart, contributing to a growing understanding of his role beyond the boxing ring. He wasn't just a fighter anymore, he was a bridge between desperation and possibility. The image of Ligaya and Mayumi Santos wouldn't leave his thoughts. He pictured them lying in their shared bed, probably unaware of the global attention their story was generating, simply living their lives with the resilience and joy that children somehow maintain, even in the most challenging circumstances. Their innocence reminded him of his own children at that age, how they had looked at the world with trust and wonder, believing that everything would somehow work out. His phone buzzed again with more updates about the twins' condition. Medical experts from around the world were now weighing in on the complexity of the case, with neurosurgeons in the United States, Canada, and Australia expressing interest in taking on the challenge. The consensus was unanimous: the surgery was possible, but it required immediate action and substantial financial resources. Manny stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the familiar landscape of his hometown. The boxing ring had taught him that some fights were worth everything, regardless of the odds or the cost. This wasn't about glory or championships or breaking records. This was about two little girls who deserved the chance to live separate lives, to experience the simple joy of turning their heads independently, of pursuing their own dreams without physical limitations. The weight of his decision began to crystallize into something concrete and actionable. He thought about his various business ventures, his investments, the substantial earnings from his recent fights, and the comfortable financial security his family now enjoyed. Money that once seemed impossible to imagine was now just numbers in bank accounts, resources that could be transformed into something infinitely more valuable: hope, healing, and new beginnings. As he stood there, Manny felt the familiar surge of determination that had carried him through every major challenge of his life. The same focus that had driven him from poverty to world championship was now directing itself toward a different kind of victory, one that would be measured not in rounds or scorecards, but in the laughter of two little girls finally able to see each other face to face. Within hours of reading about the Santos twins, Manny had transformed from a concerned observer into a man of action. His home office, typically used for reviewing business contracts and training schedules, became a command center focused on a single mission. He sat behind his desk with multiple laptops open, phone calls connecting him to medical experts, and a growing stack of printed research about craniopagus twin separation surgeries from around the world. The complexity of what lay ahead became clearer with each conversation. Manny reached out to his personal physician, Dr. Ricardo Fernandez, who had been treating the Pacquiao family for years. Through Dr. Fernandez's network, he was quickly connected with pediatric neurosurgeons in Manila, who provided detailed explanations about the Santos twins' condition and the surgical challenges involved. The medical team painted a sobering picture of the procedure ahead. The surgery would require a multidisciplinary approach involving neurosurgeons, plastic surgeons, anesthesiologists, and specialized nurses working in shifts over what could potentially be a 20-hour operation. The twins would need extensive pre-surgical planning using advanced 3D imaging technology to map their shared blood vessels and brain tissue with microscopic precision. Manny learned that only a handful of medical centers worldwide had successfully performed such complex separations, with the most experienced teams located in major hospitals in the United States and Canada. The Children's Hospital of Philadelphia emerged as the leading candidate, with a renowned neurosurgical team led by Dr. Margaret Chen, who had successfully separated 12 sets of conjoined twins over her career. As evening approached, Manny found himself on a video call with Dr. Chen herself, who who had graciously agreed to review the twins' medical files despite the late hour in Philadelphia. Her expertise was immediately apparent as she discussed the case with both clinical precision and genuine compassion. She confirmed that while the surgery was extremely complex, the twins were good candidates for separation based on their age and the specific nature of their connection. The financial requirements were staggering, but not insurmountable for someone in Manny's position. Beyond the surgical fees, the twins would need to be transported to Philadelphia with a specialized medical team, require months of pre-surgical preparation, including tissue expansion procedures, and then face an extensive rehabilitation period that could last up to a year. The total cost, including all medical care, accommodation for the family, and post-surgical therapy, approached $1.5 million. While these conversations unfolded, Manny's assistant, Benilda Cruz, had been quietly coordinating with local media contacts in Mindanao to arrange a discreet visit to the Santos family. The goal wasn't publicity. Manny specifically requested that no media be present during his initial meeting with Angelo and Clarita Santos. This needed to be a private conversation between parents, away from cameras and public attention. The logistics of organizing such a visit required careful planning. Manny would travel to Mindanao the following day, accompanied only by his security detail and a medical coordinator who could help explain the surgical process to the Santos family in terms they could understand. The trip would be conducted with minimal fanfare, though Manny knew that once word spread about his involvement, the story would capture international attention. As night fell over General Santos City, Manny sat in his garden reviewing everything he had learned throughout the day. The magnitude of the commitment he was considering went far beyond the financial investment. He would essentially be taking responsibility for guiding this family through a medical journey that would test everyone involved, with outcomes that, despite the best medical expertise, remained uncertain. The risk was significant, but Manny had built his entire career on calculated risks, taken in pursuit of something greater than personal gain. This felt like the most important fight of his life, even though it would take place in an operating room rather than a boxing ring, with scalpels instead of gloves, and with victory measured in the successful separation of two precious lives rather than championship belts. The early morning flight from General Santos City to Davao carried more than just passengers. It carried the weight of hope and possibility that had kept Manny awake most of the previous night. As his private plane descended through the clouds over Mindanao, he gazed out at the familiar landscape of his birth region, where poverty and resilience had shaped so many lives, including his own. The drive from the airport to the Santos family's barangay took them through winding roads that gradually transitioned from paved highways to dirt paths lined with coconut palms and modest homes. Manny's security team maintained a respectful distance as they approached the small community where Ligaya and Mayumi had spent their entire lives, surrounded by neighbors who had watched over them with the protective instincts of an extended family. Word of an important visitor had somehow spread through the tight-knit community. Though the residents had no idea of the magnitude of what was about to unfold, children peered curiously from behind bamboo fences while their parents whispered among themselves, sensing that something significant was happening in their quiet neighborhood. The Santos family home stood at the end of a narrow lane, a modest structure built with love and resourcefulness rather than substantial means. The Nipa hut had been carefully modified over the years to accommodate the twins' special needs, with custom-built ramps and a specially designed bedroom that allowed for easier movement and care. Angelo Santos stood in his doorway, his weathered hands trembling slightly as he recognized the approaching figure. The tricycle driver, who had struggled for 7 years to provide for his extraordinary daughters, found himself face to face with one of the Philippines' most beloved heroes. The moment seemed surreal, as if the universe had conspired to bring together two fathers from vastly different worlds, united by their love for their children. Clarita Santos emerged behind her husband, cradling their youngest child while trying to comprehend the scene unfolding before her. Her eyes, worn by years of sleepless nights caring for the twins, filled with a mixture of disbelief and cautious hope. She had prayed countless times for a miracle, but never imagined it might arrive in the form of the man now walking toward their home. Inside the house, Ligaya and Mayumi lay on their shared bed, unaware that their lives were about to change forever. The 7-year-old twins had been coloring in shared sketchbooks, their small hands working in remarkable coordination as they created pictures of flowers and butterflies. Their laughter echoed through the small rooms, a sound that had sustained their family through the darkest moments of uncertainty and financial struggle. Manny's first glimpse of the twins struck him with an emotional force he hadn't anticipated. Despite everything he had read and all the medical explanations he had received, seeing Ligaya and Mayumi in person revealed a profound truth about resilience and joy that transcended their physical circumstances. They looked up at him with bright, curious eyes, their faces radiating the innocent wonder that only children possess. The twins' bedroom had been transformed into a medical care area over the years, with specialized equipment borrowed from local clinics and improvised solutions created by their resourceful parents. Charts tracking their vital signs hung on the walls alongside colorful drawings made by the girls and letters from well-wishers around the Philippines who had learned about their story through social media. As Manny spent time observing the family's daily routine, he witnessed the extraordinary bond that had developed not just between the twins, but among all the Santos family members. Their two other children, 9-year-old Renato and 5-year-old Estrella, had grown up understanding that their sisters needed special care and attention, contributing to household responsibilities with maturity beyond their years. The medical coordinator accompanying Manny began explaining the surgical possibilities to Angelo and Clarita, using simple terms to describe the complex procedure that could potentially give their daughters independent lives. The parents listened with rapt attention, their faces cycling through emotions of hope, fear, gratitude, and overwhelming responsibility as they began to understand the magnitude of the opportunity being presented to them. The moment when understanding dawned across Angelo Santos' face would remain etched in Manny's memory forever. The hard-working tricycle driver, who had spent 7 years carrying the impossible weight of his daughter's medical needs, suddenly realized that the man sitting in his humble living room wasn't just offering sympathy or encouragement. He was offering a complete solution to what had seemed like an insurmountable challenge. Clarita's hands flew to cover her mouth as the full scope of Manny's commitment became clear. The mother, who had spent countless nights lying awake, calculating medical costs that seemed as distant as the moon, now found herself confronting the reality that her daughter's surgery would actually happen. The emotional release was immediate and overwhelming. Years of suppressed hope and desperate prayers finally finding an outlet. The twins themselves seemed to sense the shift in atmosphere around them, though they couldn't fully comprehend the life-changing conversations taking place. Ligaya began humming one of her favorite songs, while Mayumi reached for her sister's hand, their synchronized movements reflecting the deep connection that had defined their existence from birth. Their innocence provided a touching counterpoint to the weighty adult discussions surrounding their future. News of Manny's visit began spreading through the barangay with the speed that only close-knit communities can achieve. Neighbors who had supported the Santos family through years of struggle gathered outside their home, their faces reflecting a mixture of joy, amazement, and protective concern for the family they had come to love. Elena Ramirez, an elderly woman who lived next door and had often helped care for the twins, stood with tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. The local barangay captain, Teodoro Villamor, arrived to pay his respects and express the community's gratitude. He had witnessed firsthand the Santos family's struggles and had often wished he could do more to help, beyond organizing small fundraising events that barely covered basic medical supplies. Now he found himself in the presence of someone who could transform their local tragedy into a story of hope and healing. As the day progressed, Manny worked with his medical coordinator to establish a timeline for the twins' treatment. The process would begin immediately with comprehensive medical evaluations in Manila, followed by the complex logistics of transporting the family to Philadelphia. Every detail required careful planning, from securing specialized medical transport to arranging extended stay accommodations for the entire Santos family during what could be a year-long medical journey. The financial arrangements were handled with discretion and dignity, ensuring that the Santos family would never feel like charity cases, but rather like partners in an extraordinary medical endeavor. Manny established a dedicated medical fund that would cover not only the immediate surgical costs, but also long-term rehabilitation, educational support for all the Santos children, and financial security for Angelo and Clarita throughout the extended treatment period. Young Renato and Estrella Santos listened quietly as their parents received explanations about the upcoming changes to their lives. The prospect of traveling to America and living in a new country for months was both exciting and frightening for children who had never ventured far from their small community. Their maturity and adaptability would be tested in ways they couldn't yet imagine. As evening approached and preparations were made for Manny's departure, the weight of the commitment he had made settled around him like a familiar embrace. This wasn't just about paying for a surgery, he was taking responsibility for shepherding an entire family through a medical journey that would test everyone involved. The risks were significant, but so was the potential for transformation that extended far beyond the operating room. The morning of departure arrived with a mixture of anticipation and heartbreak that seemed to permeate every corner of the small barangay. The Santos family's neighbors had gathered before dawn to bid farewell to Ligaya and Mayumi, bringing small gifts and handwritten notes that would travel with the twins to their new temporary home in Manila. The community that had watched over these children since birth was now preparing to release them into a much larger world. Packing belongings for an indefinite stay in Manila, and eventually America, proved to be an emotional challenge for Clarita Santos. How do you pack a lifetime of memories, comfort items, and essential belongings when you don't know when or if you'll return home? The twins' favorite blankets, their shared collection of coloring books, and small toys that had provided comfort during difficult medical procedures all found their way into carefully labeled suitcases. The specialized medical transport vehicle that arrived to collect the family represented technology and resources that seemed almost otherworldly in their rural setting. The ambulance had been modified with advanced life support equipment and a specially designed stretcher system that could safely accommodate the twins during the journey to Manila. Medical personnel from the Philippine Children's Medical Center had traveled to Mindanao specifically to ensure the twins' safe transport. Angelo Santos took one last look at his tricycle, the vehicle that had provided his family's livelihood for years, but had never generated enough income to address his daughter's medical needs. His neighbor, Gregorio Mendoza, had agreed to maintain the tricycle during the family's absence, a gesture that provided both practical security and emotional comfort. The simple machine represented not just work, but dignity, independence, and the hope of eventual return. The journey to Manila unfolded like a carefully choreographed medical operation, with regular stops to monitor the twins' vital signs and ensure their comfort during the long transport. Ligaya and Mayumi handled the journey with remarkable resilience, their excitement about the adventure helping to offset any anxiety about leaving their familiar surroundings. They pressed their faces against the ambulance windows, marveling at landscapes and cityscapes they had only seen in books. Upon arrival at the Philippine Children's Medical Center, the Santos family encountered a level of medical sophistication that seemed almost impossible compared to their previous healthcare experiences. Dr. Maria Concepcion Santos, the lead pediatric neurosurgeon coordinating the twins' care in Manila, had already assembled a comprehensive medical team to conduct the preliminary evaluations that would determine the twins' readiness for the complex surgery ahead. The initial medical assessments required multiple days of testing, including advanced MRI scans, blood work, cardiac evaluations, and psychological assessments. Each test provided crucial data that would be transmitted to Dr. Margaret Chen's team in Philadelphia, building a comprehensive medical profile that would guide surgical planning. The twins approached each procedure with curiosity rather than fear, their natural resilience making them ideal candidates for the challenges ahead. Word of Manny Pacquiao's involvement in the twins' medical journey had begun leaking to Philippine media outlets, though efforts were made to maintain the family's privacy during this critical preparation phase. The story was beginning to capture public attention, not just for its medical complexity, but for the profound human compassion it represented. Social media posts sharing the twins' story were generating thousands of supportive comments from Filipinos around the world. The hospital environment provided the Santos family with their first glimpse of the medical excellence that awaited them in America. Nurses like Carmela Rodriguez and orderlies such as Isagani Gutierrez went beyond their professional duties to make the family feel welcome and supported during what could have been an overwhelming transition. The twins quickly adapted to hospital routines, charming staff members with their positive attitudes and synchronized laughter. The international flight from Manila to Philadelphia represented more than just geographical distance. It was a journey across cultures, medical systems, and levels of hope that the Santos family had never dared imagine possible. Manny had arranged for the twins to travel in a specially configured medical aircraft, complete with intensive care equipment and a full medical team to monitor their condition throughout the 20-hour journey. Ligaya and Mayumi experienced their first airplane ride with wonder that transcended their physical limitations. The twins pressed against the aircraft windows during takeoff, watching their homeland grow smaller beneath them, while embarking on an adventure that would either transform their lives completely or test their family's strength in unimaginable ways. Their excitement provided emotional sustenance for Angelo and Clarita, who struggled with the magnitude of leaving everything familiar behind. The arrival at Philadelphia International Airport had been coordinated with precision that reflected both the medical urgency of the situation and Manny's commitment to protecting the family's privacy. A specialized ambulance waited on the tarmac, staffed by paramedics from the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, who had been briefed extensively on the twins' unique medical needs and cultural background. Dr. Margaret Chen greeted the Santos family personally upon their arrival at the hospital, her warm demeanor immediately putting them at ease despite the language barriers and overwhelming nature of their new environment. The pediatric neurosurgeon had spent weeks studying the twins' medical files and had assembled what she considered the most qualified surgical team ever gathered for a craniopagus separation procedure. The Children's Hospital of Philadelphia had transformed an entire wing to accommodate the Santos family's extended stay. Beyond the twins' specialized medical suite, comfortable accommodations had been arranged for Angelo, Clarita, Renato, and Estrella, complete with kitchen facilities that would allow them to prepare familiar Filipino meals during their months-long residency. Cultural sensitivity coordinators had even arranged for Filipino television programming and internet access to help maintain connections with their homeland. The preliminary medical evaluations in Philadelphia revealed both encouraging signs and sobering challenges. Advanced 3D imaging technology provided unprecedented detail about the twins, shared blood vessels and brain tissue, confirming Dr. Chen's initial assessment that separation was medically feasible while highlighting the extraordinary precision that would be required during the actual surgery. News of the twins' arrival in Philadelphia had begun attracting international media attention, with medical journalists and human interest reporters seeking interviews about the case. Manny's representatives worked carefully to balance public interest with the family's need for privacy and focus during this critical preparation period. The story was beginning to resonate globally, touching hearts far beyond the Philippines and the boxing world. The cultural adjustment period proved challenging for the Santos family in ways they hadn't anticipated. Simple activities like grocery shopping, navigating public transportation, and communicating with hospital staff required constant adaptation and learning. However, the Filipino community in Philadelphia rallied around them, with families like the Fernandez and Cruz households offering friendship, translation assistance, and emotional support during their most vulnerable moments. Ligaya and Mayumi adapted to their new environment with the resilience that had characterized their entire lives. The hospital's child life specialists, including therapist Jennifer Walsh and coordinator Michael Thompson, worked to maintain the twins' educational development and emotional well-being throughout the intensive medical preparation period. Art therapy sessions became particularly meaningful, allowing the twins to express their feelings about the upcoming surgery through drawings and creative projects. The surgical planning process intensified as Dr. Chen's team used virtual reality technology to rehearse the separation procedure multiple times. Each rehearsal revealed new challenges and refined techniques, building confidence while highlighting the unprecedented nature of what they were attempting to accomplish. The surgery date was set for 6 weeks after their arrival, allowing time for tissue expansion procedures that would provide additional skin coverage for both twins following separation. The morning of the surgery arrived with a stillness that seemed to envelop the entire Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. At precisely 6 in the morning, Dr. Margaret Chen and her 20-member surgical team began what would become a 22-hour medical marathon that would test the limits of modern neurosurgery and human endurance. In the waiting area, Angelo and Clarita Santos held each other's hands while Manny sat quietly nearby, his presence providing strength that transcended words or cultural boundaries. The separation procedure unfolded with precision that bordered on the miraculous. Each phase of the surgery had been rehearsed countless times, but the actual delicate work of separating shared blood vessels and brain tissue required split-second decisions that could only be made by the world's most skilled surgeons. Hours passed in tense silence as updates filtered from the operating room, each positive report bringing the family one step closer to a reality they had scarcely dared imagine. Around the world, millions of people had begun following the twins' story through social media and international news coverage. Prayer groups formed spontaneously in churches across the Philippines, while Filipino communities from Dubai to California held vigils throughout the surgery. The hashtag Pray for Ligaya and Mayumi began trending globally, creating a virtual community of support that spanned continents and cultures. The moment when Dr. Chen emerged from the operating room, exhaustion mixed with triumph evident on her face, marked the beginning of a new chapter not just for Ligaya and Mayumi, but for everyone who had invested their hopes in this extraordinary medical journey. The surgery had succeeded beyond even the most optimistic projections, with both twins showing strong vital signs and no signs of neurological complications. Recovery brought its own set of miracles and challenges. For the first time in their lives, Ligaya and Mayumi could turn their heads independently, a simple movement that represented the culmination of years of hope and months of intensive medical preparation. Their first independent smiles, captured by hospital photographers with the family's permission, became images that would inspire people around the world for generations to come. The twins' rehabilitation process exceeded all expectations. Physical therapists worked with them to develop independent motor skills, while occupational therapists helped them adapt to their new reality of separate existence. Their bond remained as strong as ever, but now it was a choice rather than a physical necessity. They learned to sleep in separate beds, walk independently, and pursue individual interests while maintaining their special connection. International media coverage of the successful surgery created a global wave of admiration for Manny Pacquiao that transcended his boxing achievements. The story demonstrated that true greatness could be measured not just in championship victories, but in the willingness to transform personal success into opportunities for others. Medical centers around the world began reaching out to offer similar assistance to families facing impossible medical challenges. 6 months after the surgery, the Santos family returned to the Philippines as completely transformed individuals. Ligaya had developed a passion for painting, while Mayumi discovered a talent for music. Their siblings, Renato and Estrella, had grown into confident young people through their American experience, and Angelo and Clarita had gained the knowledge and connections to become advocates for other families facing similar challenges. The ripple effects of Manny's compassionate decision continued expanding long after the twins' recovery. A foundation established in their honor began providing medical assistance to Filipino families with children requiring specialized care. The story of Ligaya and Mayumi Santos became a testament to the power of human compassion to overcome seemingly impossible obstacles. Years later, when people asked Manny about his greatest victory, he would often think not of championship belts or boxing records, but of two little girls who could finally see each other face to face, their independent laughter echoing across an ocean of hope that had carried them from desperation to miraculous new beginnings. Thank you for watching another episode of Champion Stories. If you enjoyed today's story, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming inspiring tales about Manny Pacquiao. Share your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one, and many times your ideas inspire our next episode. See you next time.